Well, hello and happy Wednesday. I hope everybody's doing good. So, it's midweek chat. Normally, I like to do this a little bit earlier in the day on Wednesdays, but here we are. And so, I had a client to cancel today, and so I thought this would be perfect for me to get this in today. It's been an aggressive and busy week. And so, I want to talk about something that is a key element of what I share with my clients and what I teach in my conferences and things of that nature. And I want to dive into it a little bit today. And of course, for those of you that are part of my program, my coaching and mentoring program, you'll get the in-depth goods on this. And for those of you that may be a part of the upcoming masterclass taking place on the 23rd of July, that's a free masterclass. I'll share some deeper dive nuggets about this area. But it's clarity. It's clarity, clarity, clarity. And so when I'm talking about clarity, I'm talking about clarity for you as an individual, relative to your life, to your business, to what it is that you do your day to day, being clear about who you are, what it is that you want, what it is that you do not want. And so I've been in some rooms this week that have even brought some things home for myself, and how it's so important. And I teach articulation and making sure that you're able to clearly articulate. And so sometimes we can take things for granted, and I know I'm big about honoring time and making sure that I don't overstate myself, but at the same time, you need to state enough to always be clear. And so I learned a valuable lesson myself. And so I want to kind of talk about a few things today. And so I would encourage you to share this with anybody that you know it will help. And of course, the replay will be available, and I'll share it on my other platforms. And this is going to be one that will be on my YouTube channel as well, so you can definitely go back. But I want to take the few minutes that I set aside today to talk about clarity and share some specifics when it comes to that. And I'm going to quickly, as you know I like to do, is make sure that I can interact with you if you have any questions or you're posting anything in the chat. So I'm going to quickly bring up this so that I can monitor that as well and be able to acknowledge you when you do have a question or insight. So give me just a moment to get that up, and that way I can flow without distraction. All right. So let me get up so I have on my screen some things that I want to make sure that I don't forget to share with you today. Super. So this way I can see who jumps in. So clarity. It is so important. And the reason why this is such an important element is because one of the things that's my lane is vision. And so as a vision clarity coach, the main thing is to make sure that you are clear about what you want, what you do not want, and how you want it. And so in order to establish a strategy or a plan of action for any vision, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's your life, if it's writing a book, if it's starting a business, if it's overhauling a ministry, if it's getting a team together, if it's restructuring something. It matters not what it is. The process and the formula that I use will work across the board. However, there has to be clarity before we can establish strategies to therefore put a plan of action in place for implementation and execution. Okay, so clarity is, and I wanted to go a little deep in this because all of this is important. So I don't know that I'm going to get to all of the gems that I want to share. So you might want to definitely make sure that you register for the free masterclass, because I will get into all of these areas, because this is important in order to manage your vision. You have to have clarity. You have to be clear on what the end result is, what that big picture is that you're trying to get to fulfillment or manifestation. Okay. Clarity is the quality of being clear. We know that. Transparent. Now this is a piece, and easily understood. So sometimes we can speak clear, but we're not transparent. and we can be transparent, but it may not be easily understood. So all three of those elements have to coincide, and they have to function together. So we have to not only be clear, but be transparent and be easily understood. Now, you may not be clear, transparent, and easily understood in every environment that you're in, but in the environment that is important and that is of a vital value to you, then you want to make sure that you're clear, you're transparent, and you're easily understood, because that's going to help whoever is trying to assist you or help you be more clear about how, and have more clarity about how they can assist you going forward. Does it make sense? Okay, let's move on. Clarity refers to the absence of ambiguity, confusion, or uncertainty in communication. So here again, it goes back to these three elements: being clear, being transparent, being understood. If you're clear, you're transparent, and you're easily understood, there won't be ambiguity, there won't be confusion, and there won't be uncertainty in your communication. Okay? Next, when something is clear, it is easy to see or understand, and there is no doubt or misunderstanding. So there is no wavering or trying to figure out, what is she saying? What does she mean? And so therefore, those are opportunities and times when we have to give more content, or we have to establish more clarity. Okay? Clarity can refer to various aspects of communication, such as language, ideas, objectives, instructions, and or expectations. If you're not clear about any of those particular areas, then it's going to be difficult for an individual or group or whoever your audience is to get clarity. The next thing about clarity is that it's essential for when we talk about the context of providing information. That's in education. So if you're teaching somebody, then you want to be clear in the context for which you're teaching, so that people get understanding, so that they learn, and whereas they learn, they grow. Okay? In business, if you're trying to establish a plan of action for operating a business, starting a business, implementing a new piece or a new procedure or process within a business, then there needs to be context, clarity of context. And so that can go along with relationships, relationship conversations, all sorts of things. And of course, when it comes to relationships, that can be many different types of relationships. Okay. Then when we talk about clarity, can be achieved through various means, such as simplification, meaning you break it down to the least common denominator, or the least elementary common level fundamentally that can be understood. That means you may not need to use big words, but you want to use something simplistic in nature that anybody across the board can understand. Okay? Precision. That is, here again, just a form of breaking things down, precisely indicating number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. And in step 2, 3, and 4, you do this. And in step 4, 5, 6, you do that. And when you come back, you do step 7. And in step 7, you will do 1, 2, 3. That's precision. That's a precision timeline. And it gives you precise instructions for each step that you take. Organization, making sure that there is order, because order breeds growth. And when there's clarity there, then you can establish order. And then that order, by just by nature, is going to breed growth. Coherence and particular emphasis to particular things. And then lastly, clarity is a valuable skill to have, because it affects so many different areas. So it helps you to have efficiency, credibility. It establishes trust. So it is so very important. So clarity is key. And the reason why it's key, because it will unlock many doors for you when there is clarity. Brennan Bouchard says, how you think about tomorrow and what you do to stay connected with what matters today is what clarity is. I'm going to say it again. How you think about tomorrow and what you do to stay connected with what matters today is clarity. And let me just talk about that a little bit. My thought process when I read that was, you have to have futuristic goals. You have to have a view or an inward sight ability to be able to see futuristically and establish something to challenge yourself to move forward. So when you get vision, that's a revelation. That's something that's 9 times out of 10 is something for the future. It's something for an appointed time. But now you got to work each day. Today, I got to work on the vision for tomorrow. Right? And so the vision for tomorrow may not actually come to fruition on tomorrow or manifest tomorrow, but I got to work on today and stay focused on what matters today in order to get to manifestation of what it is that is the vision for a future time or an appointed time in the future. So that's important. And this is another piece that Brendon Burchard says, and it is that clarity is the child of careful thought and mindful experimentation. And I was like, ooh, that has to be broken down. So we're going to break it down. And this is probably all I'm going to get to today. So to get the rest of what I want to share about that, you're going to have to take the master class, sign up for the master class, and I'll drop that in the chat. But you can go to my website to master class, and it'll come up for you. Clarity is the child of careful thought and mindful experimentation. My goodness, how simplistic is that? But let's break it down. So let's talk about it. So of course I went and looked it up, and let's see what it says about careful thought. So when I think about careful thought, I think about taking the time to give, extreme attention to what it is that I'm doing, right? Talking it through, thinking it through, writing things down, reassessing what I put down, thinking the backside, the front side of that thought. Now, sometimes that could be a thin line between careful thought and overthinking, right? But when you are intentional about a particular decision or something you're doing, in particular, a goal, a vision, something you're working on, careful thought is important. So this is when you give serious attention to what you're doing in order to avoid harm, damage, or mistakes. Now, are you going to avoid every obstacle? Probably not. But that's a whole nother thing. That's a risk mitigation plan. So that's something else I teach clients and walk them through when they're putting a plan together. But if you're careful to do something, you want to make sure that you can do it. So you want to take the time to give it serious attention and carefully walk through the thought process. Know what you want and know what you do not want. And I was in a room today where there was a conversation, and one of the things that one of my colleagues in the group brought up was, not only do you want to be clear about what you want, but you also want to be clear about what you do not want. So you have to think from both ends of the spectrum, and I thought that was a valid point to bring out. So careful thought refers to a deliberate and thoughtful process of considering all aspects, that's what I just said, of a situation or problem before making a decision or taking action. And so how many of you know that, so many times we don't do that. We don't take that careful thought. If it's something, especially if it's clothing or a purse for women or something like that, we buying it. We ain't thinking about careful thought because we're thinking about, what brand it is, what the cost is, it's on sale, blah, 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 like they won't have another sale. So, we got all these kinds of thoughts. So it's careful thought about decisions that we make. Deliberate and thoughtful process. And you're going to consider all aspects of a situation or a problem before you make a decision or you take action. Okay. Then let's consider this piece. It involves taking the time to analyze the situation, gather information. That's another thing we may not necessarily do all the time, is gather the information. You got to do your research. Evaluate potential consequences. What could potentially happen? And based on what could potentially happen, what would I do as a result of that particular thing possibly happening? That's, here again, risk mitigation. But you take the time to get this clarity because it's important. And then consider alternative solutions before making a final decision. Here again, that's the whole risk mitigation plan. That's a whole nother conversation. But isn't this good? Because a lot of times we think about stuff, we think about it on the surface, but we don't go deep dive. And it's important to understand, what does it mean to be clear? What does it mean to have a vision? Oh my God, I'm so excited because there's some things coming up later this year that's going to really pull the stops out for all of these kinds of things, especially the Pen to Paper Conference this year. And I'm telling you, it's going to light your fire. Careful thought requires patience, objectivity, and an open-minded approach to problem solving. Okay? Careful thought requires patience, objectivity, and an open-minded approach to problem solving. That's why you have to be clear about you and who you are. If you're a person that's impatient, if you're a person that's not organized, then you got to get somebody to help you with this clarity process. Because knowing who you are, and there's some other questions that I can give you that you can ask yourself. And that, here again, that'll be a part of the class that will help you to know, am I really clear? Because the more, ambiguity there is, the less likely that you're going to be clear enough to make the decision in the best interest of yourself and those around you if you don't take the process to have total clarity. It is an important skill in both personal and professional contexts. As it helps individuals, of course, make well-informed decisions and avoid impulsive or rash actions, as I was saying in the, instance of shopping and so forth. That may result in negative consequences. So you have to think it through, follow it through, have a plan of action. If you're going to spend these monies, then how are you going to handle these monies? If you have these bills and you want to invest in this, how much room, how much leverage do you have? And I understand in some cases there are things that you have to make them happen. It's the timing is right and everything else. So you got to figure out a way. But you got to be confident enough about yourself and in yourself that if I step out and I do this, I am going to make sure that I handle my business on this end, or I'm going to do that to compensate and make up the difference. That makes sense? Careful thought requires also practicing careful and real intense critical thinking. Practicing careful thought can also improve your critical thinking as well, and your analytical skills, and lead to more effective communication as well as collaboration with others. Because when you're clear about what you're doing and what's happening, then I'm telling you, others are going to be like, okay, I can go with that, I can flow with that, because he knows what he's doing, what he wants, he's clear about it, he's taking the time to research, he's taking the time, and I'm telling you, I tell my clients all the time, you have to fill your well and make sure that you are clear as a bell on the thing that it is, that's your purpose, your calling, and the gift that's in you to do. Okay, I got a few more minutes, I'm going to try to get this other part in. So the second part of that statement, clarity is the child of what? Careful thought and mindful experimentation. So I was like, okay, mindful experimentation. Let's talk about that, right? Mindful experimentation is the practice of conducting experiments with a mindful and an intentional approach. So you got to sit down, you got to talk it out, write it out, and you got to conduct an experiment to say, if I do this, then this is what will happen. If I start this business, this is how I want to start. This is the goal. So these are the levels I want to start on. Because oftentimes, a lot of times we have visions to do things and we want to do the whole kit and caboodle at one time, when you may need to do that incrementally in stages. All right. So there are so many different aspects of it. I could go on and on and on with this one. Let me do a couple of more. It involves mindful experimentation, that is, involves being fully present and aware of your process, as well as having a clear intention and purpose for the experiment. So this goes back to you having this mindful experiment. You're not experimenting on canned apples and you trying to sell freeze cups. That's totally two different directions. So you know, and that's how some of us are, because we all over the place. We doing some of everything. So you have to have a center nucleus for what you're going to be doing, even if that's trying to get your life together. You know, you start with the practical, most fundamental base, and then you add and you go in phases and stages incrementally to help yourself grow, scale and grow and move to the next level, even if that's personal development. Start with what's easiest for you and work your way to the challenges. Here again, this approach allows a deeper understanding, which is what I was just explaining, of the experiment and the results, as well as greater insight into the underlying mechanisms at work when it comes to experimenting mindfully what it is that you want to do. All right. I think I could do one more. So mindful experimentation also involves being open to unexpected results, right? And being willing to learn from the failures, because everything is not going to work the first time out, but you'll never know if it works or not if you don't do it. And so oftentimes we want guarantees before we step and put our foot in the water. You know, it's going to be cold, it's going to be warm. Well, you know, based on you, your body temperature, your body type, it may feel warm, it may feel cool, it may feel hot. But I can't tell you what that's going to be like until you put your toe in the water. All right. So we have to, be mindful that there may be unexpected results. The results may be excellent and the results may not be so favorable. What does that do? That gives you the opportunity to then, check yourself. What did you do? What did you do well? What did you not do? How could you improve it? Maybe seek some help. Get a coach to kind of help, walk you through the process, or, guide you through what you could do that would help to improve what you did, your process, your launch, whatever it is that you're doing, your blog, how you can make it better. So the responses are never guaranteed, but you got to have enough faith in yourself and faith in God that that if I put it out here, it's going to reach and impact somebody. Okay, but if it doesn't to the degree that you feel it should, that just means you need to go back and you need to make some improvements. So rather than simply seeking to confirm preconceived notions or hypotheses, it involves approaching the experiment with an open and curious mindset and being willing to let go of any assumptions or biases. Okay, so that's a little bit about just clarity, and that's just getting to, because you've got to, another session I talked about self-awareness, self-knowledge, self-direction. So you've got to always be aware of you, who you are, and what you have the ability to do. And then you have to also be, you have to have self-awareness, self-direction. Self-awareness is going to lead to self-knowledge, and that's going to help you to really be, clear about the things. What do you know about you? What are you clear about when it comes to you? Your likes, your dislikes, your wants, the things you want, the things you don't want. You have to be clear about you. So self-awareness, self-knowledge about you is going to give you some good self-direction, right? Because then that's going to help you to make good decisions, and it's going to take action on the right things. So that's just a little bit, so I didn't get to everything that I had. I'm definitely going to be diving deeper with this piece in the masterclass as we talk about vision management in the masterclass. That is going to be an awesome, awesome class. So if you have the availability, I would encourage you. It's absolutely free to make some time to be a part of that masterclass. And that's, if you would go to bridgettemoody.com/masterclass, then you can get signed up, and I will put the link inside of the chat for those of you who are watching today, and for those of you who come back and watch the replay. I'd love to have you in the class, love to see you, and love to share with you. Tina, thank you so much for joining today and chiming in. Definitely share this with somebody. This will be on my YouTube channel as well later, so I'll share that link a little bit later. It'll be a little bit easier to just click on it and go and check it out. But listen, get clarity. Whatever you do, get clarity. It's so important. And I tell you, personal experiences heighten things for me. And so when I had a personal experience, and really what I was attempting to do was I was attempting to condense my delivery of what I was sharing so that I didn't take up so much time. But it was a mistake, because what I did was I left them kind of still with some ambiguity, trying to figure out what exactly is it that she's saying, when I should have went ahead and given all of the steps. And and as soon as I did that, there was total clarity, right? So we have to be clear. We have to be clear. It's important, whatever room you're in, whoever you're talking to, whatever stage you're on, that you are clear. And so clarity is important, and it has so many different levels to it, and we want to make sure that we take the time to get clarity. Well, listen, thank you for jumping in and sharing a few minutes with me today for Midweek Chat. I'll be back next week, and it may not be at the same time. I'll be traveling, but I'm going to try to dive in and share a few nuggets with you on next week as well. But I'll be looking forward to seeing you. If for any reason I don't get on, I'll be looking forward to seeing you on Sunday for those of you who have signed up for the masterclass. That's at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time on Sunday, July 23rd. Looking forward to seeing you there. All right. Have a good one. Until next time, I'll see you back here for Midweek Chat.